Hello, everyone. My name is Alisa, and welcome at the EPAM EngX conference. And let me introduce our nice guest, Kate Pretkel, Vice President of Special People Programs at the EPAM system, an expert in diversity, cultural differences, ESG, leadership, and whatnot. I'm sure that all the EPAM employees have at least ever heard Kate's name, as we receive these nice newsletters from Kate, and I'm so happy that I have a chance to say hello. Hi, Kate. Hi there. How are you?
Hi.
What time is it in your location?
Hi, it's 11 a.m. in the morning. I'm in Newtown in the US, so
Oh,
hi from the East Coast of the United States.
hi from Poland. It's evening already. So, Kate, I'm so happy that I can ask you a question. I'm curious about it for I think for a year already. What does it mean? What does your position mean? What is it to be a special people program director?
Good question. Sometimes I ask myself, what is it about? But my experience with EPAM, and I've been with the company for 10 years, is that like every second year or so, I'm getting a new role, a new position, and the more I grow with the company, the more different areas that I'm starting to be responsible for. So right now, after being the head of HR in Belarus, Armenia, and Kazakhstan, and then moving to the US, being head of HR in US, Canada, and Latin America. Now I'm responsible for a few areas that you've, Lisa, already mentioned: the leadership development and all of the leadership promotions at EPAM, diversity, equity, and inclusion, something that we're going to talk about today, and also so-called ESG programs, that stands for environment, social, and governance. That's a huge concept, and I just like encourage you to Google about that. But that's essentially how the company works and what are the social commitments of the company toward like communities and the world overall. So a lot of exciting things. I wish we could have a bit more hours a day to have even more progress and impact with these programs.
No, yes, it sounds quite global, but how does it happen? I know that you have amazing engineering education and IT background, but now you're responsible for quite global things. Do you like it, and how does it happen?
I do like it, and you've mentioned that initially I do have an engineering background, but like from from I from the time that I remember myself, I was always interested and curious, not just in how different things and objects work. I was like destroying like a lot of stuff at home, but also in how people work, how humans work, how our psychology um, works and makes us who we are. So at some point, after being in the maternity leave and giving birth to my daughter, and usually, if anyone had an experience of having a child, that's the moment when you start to um, get to know yourself much better. And I started to be even more interested in not in engineering itself, but in how engineers work together, what makes them a team, how these teams can be performing better. And the presentation that I'm going to give today is very much about it as well, about how do we create a certain culture in the teams to make these teams more safe, more productive, and at the end of the day, like performing better and creating like better solutions. So that's what I'm always curious about. And every position that I had was pretty much about it, how to help people be their best selves at work.
Okay, and I have just a little comment before we start your nice presentation about diversity. Uh, Dear guests, if you have any questions to Kate, please use our chat. You have a chat and special tab for questions and answers in the web page of the event. After Kate's presentation, we will have like maybe 10 or maybe 15 minutes, and I will read those questions and address them to Kate. And if we still or won't have enough time, Kate will answer those questions later, maybe in text or offline. So please be brave, use this tab And okay, Kate, let's start. I'm really curious to know everything about diversity, what you have prepared.
Thanks, Lisa, and thank you for the introduction, and thanks to the whole community team and the conference team for inviting me to present. When getting ready for this particular presentation, and I was sharing with the team before we started that I've spent last evening rearranging the slides to create a story that I'd like to share with you today. I started to think about like diversity, equity, and inclusion, not in terms of those like corporate buzzwords that you've probably heard so many times, but no one actually understands what they are about. And why actually even a thing? Why do we talk about it, right? So why it matters? And what I wanted to share with you is that it really feels much safer when we deal with something familiar. That's just who we are and how humans work. That's our reaction, right? And it feels more safe even when it isn't. We are like wired to make judgments out of the information that we are getting like during our lifetimes. And it pretty much helped us to survive and to be where we are. When like in ancient times, like living in the tribes, if you are different or if you see someone who is from a different tribe, you should probably be at least suspicious and most probably be aggressive toward the person. But we are in 2022. I mean, so we are not living in the tribes anymore, and probably we are much, much more smart right now, but we are still getting in this trap. And besides just, some emotional feeling of comfort and safeness, we hate feeling awkward. And in many cases, when we deal with something that we don't really understand or know, we do feel emotional discomfort that we try to avoid in any way. And the more conscious we are, the easier for us to recognize those moments and like ask ourselves like, oh, whoa, what's happening? Is it like really something that's going on, or is just like my automatical reaction to something? What is also important, and we won't go deep into the psychology of how humans work, but when we are blocking the uncomfortable feelings, we are also blocking all of the potential for the positive vibes, for the positive ones. It's impossible to stop feeling something uncomfortable and keep feeling something good. It just doesn't work like that. I do encourage you to think about it. Also, we are again humans, and we do like having some benefits, and we would like to keep these benefits with us. And there is a concept that I'm not going to talk in details about today, but I've added a few QR codes on a few slides with the links where you can, watch a video or like read something. And there is a video that pretty much explains what privilege is about. This term is a bit better known in let's say the United States, but might not be known for others. We do, many of us, not everyone, but many of us, we do have some privileges, and that's fine. I mean, like, doesn't mean that your life is better or less difficult, but understanding these privileges and understanding how different people are getting from different backgrounds, having different experiences, is just important for the conversation and for your personal maturity overall. Also, this talk is not going to be about like all rainbows and ponies and how diversity and equity and inclusion is good and important. It's not easy. It's not easy because like all of these statements that I've shared with you on the previous slides, and it requires much, much more intellectual and emotional effort. But no pain, no gain. It's not always true, but it's pretty much the case for this particular conversation that we have today. And we working in the teams or in the companies that are homogeneous, we feel being more effective. and a lot of different researchers. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of people who would like others who have these privileges to understand that they are also smart and capable and they can, produce great results. There were like a lot of different researches proving that it's not quite the case. We definitely feel safer. We definitely uh, assume that this way team is more effective, and we also tend to pay much more attention to the differences and assume that there are like more conflicts in the teams with different backgrounds. More conversations, yes, but more conflicts, there's usually a different reason for that. So the essence of like this part of the story, and if you would like to get more details, there are like numerous researches on how diversity of opinions, of regions boosts the productivity and the innovation in the teams. So check it out if you'd like to have a bit more evidence that I'm able to share during this like relatively short presentation today. And because it's an additional intellectual and emotional efforts, usually non-homogeneous teams that represent like different opinions, backgrounds, and experiences, they are usually just simply smarter. You need to be not just intellectually smart, but also emotionally smart. And that starts to be more and more important in any profession, in any industry, including the technology space. And it challenges our brain. So it challenges our like ancient patterns and behaviors to act differently and to be different. And it amazingly sharpens the performance and the ability to see things from a different perspective and to actually be more effective in work, making better careers, being better managers and leads for teams. Only when people feel safe and welcome about their differences, we in the teams and in the companies can benefit from their unique perspectives. And there is one concept that is called a groupthink, which I'm sure a lot of us believe to be a good thing. So everyone in the team thinks the same. We have the same attitudes toward things. We have the same ideas about that. So it's easy for us to talk to each other. We are like all together. But actually, that's a bad thing for the team's performance. And especially if this team requires any creative solutions or it solves any complex issues, the more diverse opinions, ideas, and experiences can be brought on the table, the better the result will be. Will it take sometimes more time? Probably yes. Will it take others in the team to be smarter and emotionally smarter, to listen to all of these ideas and be able to discuss them respectfully? Probably yes. But the result actually worth trying. It's difficult to overcome differences in values, and that's what I was talking about when I mentioned the conflicts that might appear in the teams that are so different and people in the teams who are so different. And usually from my experience, and I've been in HR and at EPAM for more than 10 years for now, most of the conflicts are on the level of values and not the ideas or experiences that people have. And values are very much about the agreement between all of the team members. And I'm talking about teams, but we can extrapolate to the size of the company. How do we behave? How do we act toward each other? What is accepted and what's not? So adding new people to the team and adding new experiences to the team, it's really important to make sure that we do understand and share the same values. So it will be easier for us using these values as the guidance to actually interact and talk to each other. And that's the job, and most of the responsibility, we'll put it this way, is on the lead of the team, like a manager, project manager, whoever has this official or unofficial authority to, influence the culture in the team and set these values and making sure that we reinforce them. And being open-minded and fostering the inclusion and diversity in the team is part of the values. Otherization, another term that I'm using from time to time, and I wanted to mention it today, because the more we otherize others in the team, the harder for us to fill this gap and to build these bridges to really being able to form the community. And you are part of the engineering excellence community. So we are talking right now to the community itself. And this community also has its values that are part of the pledge that you can check on the website for the event. And I did that yesterday and just like copied this part, that we pledge to act and interact in ways that contribute to an open, kind, welcoming, diverse, inclusive, and healthy community. There's not okay, so we do have diverse and inclusive like as two words here, but that's pretty much what I'm talking about. So what culture do we create so that others can feel being welcomed, kind to each other, open, and feel safe to share their unique ideas and experiences? That's what DE&I for me is about. The last piece of information about similarities, then we'll talk a bit about the differences. I've mentioned that a few times already, and we'll just reiterate the point that we as humans, we do seek validation. We unconsciously seek for people who are like us to validate that it's okay to be our, whom we are. It's okay to be a jazz lover. It's okay to be a Java developer. It's okay to be a woman in leadership at EPAM. And why I'm mentioning that, in many cases, when we talk about like corporate programs for diversity and inclusion, we start to talk about like hiring more women, hiring more African Americans, you name it. Like, and for different countries, there will be different characteristics, but women probably is very much the same for every location. Why it's important? Because we do want validation. We do seek validation that someone like me can actually be a developer in the team. Someone like me can actually make a career in this company. Someone like me can create this type of solutions and be successful in this or that industry. Without this validation, it's really hard for the kids, for the youth, and for us adults sometimes to believe in ourselves that we can achieve something and move toward these goals. We also, as humans, tend to generalize. That's how our brain works. We are dealing with so much information these days that without generalization, we won't be able to process even a piece of this information. That helps us in many ways, but it also a trap that we are getting into when we start to generalize our experiences with people. So when we see that someone has something in common with us, we generally usually assume that this person will also have other positive characteristics that I have. He is like me or she is like me. So I'm good. Probably they're good as well. And you can imagine that it works in a different way when we are meeting someone who is not like us. We automatically assume the worst. We also want to be liked. And if anyone ever will tell you that they don't want to be liked and they They are not interested in that, not in 100% of the cases, but the majority of these people want to be liked so much that they are even scared to admit that themselves. And they will never agree with you. But jokes aside, that's important. And again, that helped us to survive, and that helped us to be where we are today. Being a part of the group is important. If you are being liked, you are most likely will be protected by the group and you will survive. And the last point about self-expansion opportunity, different philosophers like starting from Greece and Rome, like in ancient times till nowadays, are talking about humans as being like creative creatures. We seek new knowledge, we seek new experiences, and that's a part of who we are. But if we will apply logic, so we should be looking for people who are dissimilar to us, so they have more knowledge and that we don't have. They should have more experience that we don't have. But because of many different factors, we won't go there. We still tend to interact with someone who is actually similar rather than dissimilar. It's easier, it's safer, it does not require that much emotional and intellectual efforts. So we choose the easy path. So what I propose to you today is to spend the next 20 minutes getting this self-expansion opportunity. And now I'll get back to the classical terms that we use when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and we'll start with the diversity one. What is it even about? So when someone talks about diversity, there are four major types, and there are different ways you can like combine and structure them, but I decided that this one is the easiest one for our conversation today. So the first one is about the internal diversity, something you cannot change. You're being born of a certain gender, you have a certain race, you have a certain sexual orientation. Surprise, you're getting that when you're being born. You have a nationality, your physical abilities, you can't change that. And I do encourage you to actually use the QR code and go and at least like scroll and through the Declaration of Human Rights. So these documents pretty much describes all of the different characteristics that are protected, that and no one should be, can be, and should and hopefully will be discriminated against those characteristics. So most of them are under the internal diversity. The next one is about external diversity, something that we can consciously change if we would like to, but the essence is that like no one should and could force us to do that. And it's about education and religion and appearance or location. So we all have different experience and we want to get different experience, and that's totally fine. Organizational diversity, that's more about how our companies, governments, societies are structured. We have different job functions, we have different seniority, different departments working with each other. So it creates the diverse organization. And the point that I wanted to make on this particular diversity component is that when we start to overuse the referral programs and keep referring our friends and people whom we know who are like us in our teams, on one hand, that's cool. You know, it's easier. They are getting better and faster and easier adapted to the environment, and we support them. But at the same time, we are getting into this trap of having the same experience, the same background, the same people looking the same, and sometimes like all males in the meeting room in the executive conference room, for example. So it works like that. And the worldview diversity, that's about the experiences that we are getting through exploring different cultures, traveling different countries. The more we see, the more we read, the more we experience, the more differently and in more with more agility and in the more diverse ways we are able to interpret this information. With that said, there are a few examples that I wanted to share about the diversity at work, and some of these examples might be very relevant to the tech industry, and some of them we take for granted right now. The first one that is about the cross-functional representation, and if you look around and see all engineers, you know there's a problem. And we won't go into the details, I'm sure, like how the team work effectively, and there will be like plenty of other talks during the conferences. But I would stop on the next one that is about gender and racial diversity. And just give an example of how it influences the way we work. And we at EPAM, in any other tech company, we do create products. And these products, if we will take an example that's on the slide, are being used by the customers from different groups, from different countries, from different backgrounds. And the more diverse the team who works on the product is, the better the chance that this product will be successful within all of these groups. It seemed to be like pretty logical and kind of straightforward, but it's not, unfortunately, always the case. And again, numerous researches should have been done to prove and explain why having, diverse team actually creates much, much better results when we are working on some of the products that are targeting all of these communities. So one stop here on other examples, and hopefully you were able to, at least briefly read through them. And we'll move to the part that is about inclusion. So I've flipped the order, and it's inclusion first and equity second. And inclusion is this like secret sauce that makes all of these diverse people whom we work with feel welcomed and valued together. And the name of the talk that I had today is about like being invited to the party and then being invited to dance. My first conversation with the person who worked for EPAM and was my mentor on diversity and inclusion. Her name is Hanna Bondrenko. If she will ever watch this talk, hi to you. So she shared with me that as an example. It's not enough to be invited to the party. Like you need to be invited to dance. You need to be invited and feel welcome and valid. And no one should be denied access to these opportunities based on who they are. When people don't feel like that, when they are othered or tokenized, that's, by the way, an interesting concept that, again, I encourage you to explore, especially if you are leading a team or, see yourself as any kind of a manager or leader in the company you work for. Please read about it. But if we don't feel accepted and we feel othered, we are unlikely to contribute to our fullest potential. And it, again, seemed to be very logical and straightforward. If we don't feel safe, we are not sharing our ideas, we are not really performing well, we are spending so much time on anxiety, on thinking, on overthinking. So the easier for the people in the team to interact with each other, the better the performance is for each particular individual, and for the whole team altogether. Also, people feel more rooted to their prejudices when they are a majority. And unfortunately, we are still humans, and there is not much we can do about it when unless we think about that consciously. And a reminder to promote multiculturalism. When we speak to the team and when we emphasize that it's okay in this team to share different perspectives, it's okay in this team not always to agree with each other, that creates a very different culture. And that does not force everyone in the team to feel this anxiety for not being like others. It eliminates the risk of the groupthink that I've mentioned already, and it has a detrimental impact on innovation and collaboration. You cannot be innovative if you cannot bring your full creativity and be your full authentic self in front of the others. So we are just missing out like so many opportunities, not making people feel being included and safe in the group that we work in. People enjoy working in environments where they are encouraged to bring their whole selves to work. So I've shared that already on the previous slide, and we'll just reiterate the thought, and also highlight the point that we are living in the unprecedented times. COVID, war, recession, you name it. And the more anxious and unstable we feel, the more risk we get to get depression or a burnout. And imagine that someone who does not belong to the cultural majority is being present in the team and dealing with all of that, on top dealing with the with not being included and feeling safe at work. Not the place I want to be, and not the place I want anyone to be. But talking about burnout, I just encourage you, the next talk after mine, I've checked the agenda, will be by Alexei Didik, talking specifically about burnout and how the stress makes us burning out. So that should be a great presentation. Just encourage you to join. If you haven't yet subscribed, like use the QR code. Let's not create additional stress to each other, and let's not add even more burden on the shoulders of each other. The last part out of 3 is equity. And this is not an easy concept, sometimes to understand and sometimes even to admit. Equity is the idea, and is the idea that all employees don't have the same opportunities. All people don't have the same opportunities from the very beginning. And I've shared this link to the video about the privileges, so you can check it out. It's pretty much talks about that as well. And our needs sometimes are different based on who we are and what kind of experience and background do we have. And for many of us, because of who we are, and I can talk as an immigrant and as a woman, so it takes sometimes much more effort to get to the same results as some others who are more privileged and lucky to be a part of this privileged group. So one of the concepts that I would mention here today is the gender pay gap, and that's something that all of the large companies are being tracking, checking, and eliminating. Still, it will take hundreds of years to eliminate the gender pay gap in all of the countries in the world. In the US, I can't talk about like all of the countries and share like EPAM data, but in the US, for every dollar that a man makes, a woman on average makes around 80. So for the same job, with the same experience, with the same years of knowledge, with the same impact and performance, women are still being paid less than men in most of the countries. And that definitely needs to be changed. And that's what equality is about. Why it happens? Usually there are like several reasons for that, but the concept of unconscious bias is something that I would encourage you to explore, again, as the homework uh, to this presentation. I used to hate homeworks. Not sure why I'm even mentioning homework today. But before we'll go to the unconscious bias discussion, a few words about equality and equity, because we tend to talk about providing equal opportunities to everyone. Equal opportunities is about the first picture. All of these three persons on the picture, all of them they have, in this particular artificial example, equal opportunities, but all of them are different. Equality is about the second one, and it's a very complicated concept, and we can spend another few hours arguing and sharing arguments with each other that about what and how should we do about it, and we might all address that differently, but that's just the facts. And I encourage you to always keep that in mind, that just providing the equal opportunities to everyone won't actually help those who haven't had some of the privileges and some of the opportunities that others might have in the same group. Talking about biases, I probably mentioned that already 15 times. We are humans and we don't like to feel awkward. We don't like to be emotionally uncomfortable. And we tend to think that our way of doing things and our approach is good and not problematic. That's an assumption, and we all do these assumptions, and we are, all of us are unfair in many cases to each other. That's just the fact. And sometimes those who are usually more emotionally intelligent or just more experienced and mature as a person, they are aware of most of their stereotypes, most of them, and can consciously correct them. Some are still unconscious, even for the most emotionally smart people in the group today and everyone whom I know. So it's not bad to have biases. And again, we do get them because of the way our brain works. We tend to generalize. It helps us to make decisions faster, but it's also like a trap that we are getting into. So everyone, that means you too, has unconscious biases. There is a test that can help to identify some of them. Not a perfect one, but it can still give you some understanding of where you are as the team member, as a team lead, a manager, where you are in terms of your unconscious biases. You can follow the link. There are like different tests that are race and gender related. I would just recommend to start with the gender one, again, to get some sense of how conscious you are. I knew people who were very surprised with their results. They were always thinking about themselves, about how smart they are and how good they understand themselves. And unfortunately, this test showed a very different, the test had a very different outcome. So these are just like a few examples of the biases that most of us have. Again, you might be aware of them, but you might still have them. And in some, especially under stress, when you're in a hurry, you will still have them and you act according to them. So I won't go like in details through each and every one of them, but we do have our biases towards different abilities or disabilities of others. We have a very important bias to be mentioned that is called affinity bias. If you are an interviewer and if you are making hiring decisions, that's where you can get trapped. You are by default seeing someone who is like you like the person, you assume by default that this person is better than someone else who looks differently and might not share your interests. Keep that in mind when providing a feedback to the candidates whom you interview for any position in your team. Age bias, it's in tech industry, usually we tend to discriminate people of the who are older, and most likely the younger individual will get a job, but it's also vice versa. And I'm a woman in the leadership position, and it took a while actually to stop treating myself as the 30 years old girl who is a director. So it works in both ways. We don't tend to respect the qualities and the experience that younger people might have for some of the jobs. Confirming bias, we usually, again, and the smarter you are, the more biased you are in this term. You will be so good at finding different arguments that will keep proving your point. Just believe me, the smarter you are, the more biased you can be. Educational background bias is pretty straightforward. Ethnicity and race biases, I'm sure like most of you understand what is it about, and we do tend to generalize like everyone who is of this race are like that. But it also some of the positive biases are also present that we usually don't think about like something bad. Like all Asians are good at mathematics, all African Americans are good at basketball. So it actually doesn't help these people, putting them into these boxes, even if they would never like to play basketball and would never like to make a career or get a degree in mathematics. Gender bias, pretty obvious. Groupthink bias, I've talked about it, about the groupthink and the dynamic that is sometimes being created in the group where everyone tends to think and act the same. Halo bias, an interesting one, and usually some people are getting like so professionally in love with someone they don't see like any negativities, and then like bam, out of a sudden, like in a year or two, it happens that the person is not the one whom you think they are. Maternal bias, a very risky bias for you if you're leading the team, and for women themselves. Many of us, unfortunately, tend to believe that women are really less competent or less committed to their jobs if they are becoming mothers. And performance bias, the last one that I'm going to stop on today, that is about differences in how I will make an example based on the gender, and how we assume the person will perform. And I've mentioned, and Lisa mentioned that at the beginning, that I'm responsible for the leadership development, and I'm pretty much spending a lot of time in the conversations about someone's promotions. We still tend to promote men based on their potential. We assume by default that they do have more potential, even without some accomplishments that are like facts and can be shared. On the other hand, when we are promoting women, we tend to look for approve and constant reapprove of their capabilities, thinking unconsciously that they are by default having less potential. Keep that in mind. Again, you're not a bad person if you have these biases, but you are not smart if you're not trying to slow yourself down and think about the decisions that you are making in a very conscious manner. Ask yourself twice, why do you make this hiring decision? Why are you promoting this person or that? Why are you providing feedback for your team member? And is it really related to the performance and the result you're going to achieve, or your personal perception of the person with whom you're working with. Slow down. We are moving so fast these days, but that's important. And the last point that I want to share today about what can be done, I've shared some of the recommendations, pieces of unsolicited advice today with you, but a few last points that I want to make is, first of all, be vulnerable. And that's not easy sometimes to understand what it means, but if you are being open to others in the team, if it's okay for you, for either, it's if it's okay for you to discuss other ideas, if it's okay for you to not always be right in the team. That's there are like many people who stuck with their opinion. They are so scared to be like vulnerable and criticized. Show to the team that it's okay to be different and it's okay to be vulnerable. Be transparent, especially if you are leading the team, about the experiences, and provide feedback and collect feedback and try to address the concerns. It's easier to discuss everything from the very beginning on the level of like values and how do we interact with each other, not waiting till the escalation when someone is already extremely frustrated and there's a conflict in the team. Involve all of the team members into that. Be a champion if someone is making jokes, if someone is discriminating someone, speak up. And yes, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes we're not really sure like what and how we should do. Please reach out to HR if there is one whom you trust and who's working with you who can help. Reach out to the manager whom you believe might be helpful for this particular situation, or just read. There's like so much information online about how to deal with different cases and different situations. And the last, but not the least, know yourself and be yourself. The best antidote to the unconscious bias and to these challenges when we work in the diverse teams is knowing other people, not assuming, but really getting to know them, and knowing yourself, your limitations, your biases, your concerns, your fears, and your desires. Be yourself, know yourself, get to know others better, and really do your best. Start with yourself to create the culture and the experience in your team that will boost the innovation, make everyone feel comfortable, make everyone perform and show their best at work. It's much more fun working in this environment, not just because this is the right thing to do, but just because it's really much, much more fun. Lisa, with that, giving the word back to you. I did my best to fit in time. We still have a few minutes left, so if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Kate, for a very interesting presentation. We really are almost out of time, but I hope that that we could take at least 5 minutes more, because we have a lot of questions in the chat. It's a very sensitive topic, and let's try to answer some questions. And those we will not answer today, maybe you would answer later in written form. I'll try to read some interesting questions. Question from Darina is how to keep the communication professional and neutral when we are talking about some sensitive topics such as gender inequity, for instance, escalating sexist comments, biased attitude towards women, disregard of non-binary genders, and such like things. Do you have experience about it?
Definitely, I do. Can you read the first part of the question? So, what the question is about?
How to keep communication professional and neutral when we are talking about such things?
It's not easy to keep the communication neutral, especially if you are the person experiencing the harassment or discrimination. I mean, it's really not easy. But there is a responsibility on the managers or HR side to be able to listen and to differentiate the emotional part from the facts. And every time, if something like that is being escalated, there will be someone. I can talk about EPAM, right? So we have like different people who are joining the conference, but there will be someone who has an experience dealing with such cases. And again, differentiating the emotional component from the actual facts and having sometimes conversations and like discovery about what has happened. It's hard to say how to be neutral when it really hurts, and it hurts like pretty bad. Um, at the same time, what helps me personally is I always keep in mind that, yeah, this needs to be changed, and the person who's doing that needs to get feedback. But how can this feedback be um, delivered the way that this person will actually want to change, not fight back, not, you know, get into the position that it's you, not me, but how to share your experience the way, talking about yourself, not that someone is wrong, but how you feel about it, that will actually make the person think about the consequences of these actions. That's probably the advice that I can give right now, but every case is very different.
Okay, I hope that helps. Um, since the topic is very sensitive and we are not afraid of any questions, I'll read quite interesting question and I'm interested to know your attitude about it. So
Okay.
get ready. What's the reason of very different EPAM statements in social media during Pride months in
Mhm.
2021 and 2022? In 2021, it was text like that: "We respect everyone, regardless of race, religion, etc., with a rainbow background, but not any single word about LGBT orientation or gender identity." But this year, it was a real statement in support of such group. What changed in our company?
Um, to properly answer the question, it will really like help to understand the context of the question, because I'm really not getting what is what the person is trying to figure out. So if you're working for EPAM, you can always reach out to me in Teams. But it's as easy as that. So I started working on the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs starting last year. And we do have a lot of communication externally and internally. And sometimes the last 3 years were challenging with all of the events happening. We might like switch the focus and sometimes not pay enough attention to some of the messages, or having like a conscious decision to make a certain statement this or that way. We do support, as the company, LGBTQ community. We do make everything possible to make sure that they are not discriminated, that everyone who belongs to the community feel valued, respected, and has the same possibilities as anyone else. We do believe that it's okay to be open, gay, or anyone belonging to this community. And moreover, we're going to issue the communication during the next week. Also, I guess it should be like on the Monday, November 28th, about creating the affinity or employee resource groups, who are actually the groups that are devoted to women or LGBTQ community. So there's like no like super reason for, you know, putting in letters on the picture or not putting it there. So like no theory and something like that behind that. So we want to do more. We want to be more conscious about like what and how we share. We are just not there yet. And hopefully, again, I don't know what the expectation is from the person who is asking the question, but we will definitely keep supporting the community and maybe thinking twice about what we put in the picture.
It was an anonymous question. I don't know if it's our employee or is some
Well,
external, but anyways, I hope
you can reach out
your
to me on
answer
LinkedIn if you'd like
was
to know more. I will be happy to share. I just like really trying to share the most relevant kind of details, but it's hard to understand what will be the most relevant ones.
well really out of time, but if you could answer quite short or the last question,
Okay.
and we will close the discussion. if you could answer in short,
Yep.
why color blindness is a bad thing?
Oh, that's not a question that I can answer shortly, but we'll leave you with this information. Sometimes the best way um, to make different people work in the same team can be counterintuitive. So saying that everyone is the same, I don't see your gender, I don't see your race, actually gives the message to the person that your gender does not exist, your race does not exist. So I don't care who you are, you should be like others. So it's like a really pretty complex psychological concept that we won't be able to discuss in a few minutes, but not emphasizing, but respecting the differences in the team and respecting that we have different people from different experience and different cultures, and letting them be themselves so that they can actually express themselves the way they are and feel safe sharing who they are. That's what makes the difference. And that's what color blindness is about, if short.
Thank you, Kate, for your presentation and for your answers. We still have some other questions. I will send them to you because they are not
Sure.
anonymous and you could reach those people and answer them directly. Thank you,
Sure.
everyone, for joining. And we have just 3 minutes left before the next talk. Alexei Didik about burnout. So
Yeah, I do encourage
take a
everyone
break
to join.
with tea and get ready for the next talk, the last for today. Thank you, everyone. Everyone. See you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks everyone for joining. Bye bye.
Bye bye.